Andor did something very interesting with regards to canon and continuity. It broke canon in two distinct places, but I use that phrase very loosely because the show very quickly validated this diversion from maintaining continuity by either adhering even more closely to previously released material or providing an immediate rationale for the existence of both. Maybe I'm not explaining that clearly or succinctly enough, but I promise I will make it make sense. Or at least I will try to make it make sense. I can be very bad at explaining things. Tony Gilroy, the showrunner for Andor, very clearly had something to say with Andor, and he felt that the struggle against the Empire in Star Wars was the best place to say it. There is always the argument of substance over continuity or vice versa, and I am of the opinion that substance is incredibly important. Having recently finished Andor finally, I say that with absolute certainty because wow, was that show profound. However, I do feel that there is something to be said about the responsibility of entering into a fictional universe and contributing to its canon. I think that as a writer, whether for a book or a movie or a TV show, that you need to adhere to what has come before. Be mindful of what the timeline is and what others have contributed to this world. If you wish to tell a story that really has something to tell its audience, then do so in a fashion befitting of said timeline. All that said, I want to say that somehow they did both with Andor. They broke canon, but paid homage to what came before in a brilliant way and made the new lore sync up with everything else in a very fitting manner. In essence, canon wasn't broken, it was expanded upon in the best way possible. The first instance I'd like to discuss, one in which I've made a video on previously, occurs in Season 1, where Cassian Andor returns home to his adoptive mother after having some trouble with the Sector Authority. Cassian and his mother worry that the Empire may discover the true homeworld of Cassian, that being the planet Kenari, the location of what seems to be some kind of government cover-up stretching back to the Galactic Republic and the Clone Wars. Marva, his adoptive mother, says that Cassian's homeworld on his forged identification says Fest, that it has always said Fest rather than Kenari. This is very, very cool because before this show came out, the visual dictionary for the movie Rogue One listed Cassian's homeworld as Fest. On the entry for Cassian Andor, it details all of his personal background information, and his homeworld is listed as Fest, and his father is listed as being killed in a protest on Karita. This was thrown into question several years later when Andor first premiered, where it depicted that he was from a totally different place, and his father was killed on the planet Ferrix instead. So, pretty obvious contradiction, right? Well, that little scene where Marva mentions that they've always said that Cassian is from Fest retroactively recontextualizes that previous information, specifically Cassian's background entry in the visual dictionary. It essentially tells us that that particular bit of information is an in-universe cover story, rather than the actual truth. In reading that visual dictionary, we know what the Empire knows, what the public knows. We know the official story, but we don't know the truth. And in order to know that, we have to watch the show, where Marva says, your homeworld isn't Fest, it's Kenari, but we've always said Fest. I find that very interesting, and a very clever way for Tony Gilroy and the other showrunners to tell the story that they want while also acknowledging what has already been established. It broke canon, but immediately fixed it. Gilroy himself said that he saw this apocryphal information and thought of a way to still tell his story while explaining the prior canonical information. The second instance in Andor where an apparent break in continuity occurs happens in Season 2, with regards to the Gorman Massacre and Cassian's acquisition of K2SO. Before this show came out, we'd been shown the story of how Cassian Andor and K2SO became a rebel duo in a comic. This comic, called the Cassian and K2SO Special, and which came out in 2017, well before the show Andor, detailed a secret mission that Cassian Andor undertook with two other operatives named Kurtaz and Rizmor, twin sisters who also worked for General Draven, the second in command of the official Rebel intelligence network. This rebel mission involved going to the planet Wakeko to extract Imperial security protocols from an Imperial base. The mission went sideways as they eventually tripped an alarm and were attacked by an Imperial security droid, who identified himself as K2SO. They managed to deactivate him and temporarily reprogram him to escort them out of the Imperial base, which was now, due to the alarm, on high alert. While K2SO waned back and forth between hostile and friendly the whole time, the group managed to escape Wakeko with their lives, and K2 was now fully on board as a member of the rebellion. This differs drastically from what we see play out in Andor. In that show, Cassian bears witness to the Gorman Massacre, a large and controversial attack on the citizens of the planet. The whole situation on Gorman had been a ruse on behalf of the Empire. They had manipulated events so as to have an excuse to mine the planet, to get Gorman totally under their control. To do this, they facilitated a buildup of tension on the planet so as to provoke a protest from its citizens. When this happened, the Imperials had a sniper shoot one of their own troops to act as a spark in a very fragile powder keg. To everyone, including the clueless Imperial soldiers on the ground, unaware of the sniper shot coming from one of their own, the protesters had just opened fire on the Imperials. This caused chaos, and the Empire unleashed several KX droids onto the populace. The whole time, Cassian Andor had been there, attempting to assassinate an ISB agent named Dedra Miro for his own personal vendetta based on the events from Season 1. In the escape, Cassian and some other members of the Gorman Front, another rebel cell, managed to defeat and deactivate a KX droid. Cassian brought this droid back to the Masasi Temple base on Yavin 4, where they rewired it and reactivated it. It turned out to be friendly, and it joined the rebellion. This was the real version of how K2SO was recruited. Why do I say real? Because Draven had informed Cassian earlier when he returned to Yavin 4 that they were not logging anything about the past couple of operations, implying that his presence on Gorman would be scrubbed from any data. While not a direct patch-up, it implies further that the comic's depiction of the original recruitment of K2SO on Wakeko was a cover story. Cassian and the two other operatives didn't get K2SO on Wakeko. However, that doesn't mean that the operation on Wakeko never took place. In fact, it very likely did, just not the part about capturing a KX security droid for the rebellion. What this does is provide us an explanation for why the show Andor depicts a very different version of events, but also it doesn't negate the comic. The comic, much like the visual dictionary entry for Cassian Andor, has now become an in-universe cover story. Now, one more thing I'd like to point out that I thought about while working on this video is the events surrounding Mon Mothma's escape from Coruscant, including her speeches and the inclusion of Gold Squadron in something called Operation Handoff. As we saw in Andor, Mon Mothma delivered a speech, an incredibly good speech, very, very profound, and something that we could genuinely take away from and learn from. It has weight in reality, and I loved that it was in the show. After Mon Mothma delivers this very anti-Imperial, anti-Palpatine speech, she is escorted off-planet by Cassian Andor, with help from Mothma's senatorial aide, Erskine Samaj. They take Mothma to a safe house, where it is revealed that Mothma will be taken from this point on by Gold Squadron, a group of rebel pilots from the Masasi Group base on Yavin 4. She is also meant to deliver another speech to vilify Palpatine and rouse rebellion, but we do not see this speech play out in the show. Instead, we see this new speech play out in the animated show called Rebels, which came out well before Andor did. In this show, one of the episodes covers Operation Handoff. It follows our primary characters, Phoenix Squadron and the Spectres, assisting Gold Squadron in delivering Mon Mothma to Dantooine for the official declaration of the Alliance to restore the Republic. This is where the rebellion and the Galactic Civil War officially begin. But before that can happen, Gold Squadron and the Spectres have to get Mon Mothma safely there. In the episode of Rebels, a completely different speech had been shown from Mon Mothma, one that may not be as meaningful as the speech in Andor, but one that was just as inflammatory. It again depicted Mothma calling out Emperor Palpatine for his terrible actions, specifically on Gorman. She cites the Gorman Massacre. This speech was not the one that Tony Gilroy used in Andor. Gilroy had something much more poignant to say and opted to write something else, but included in his respective show a reference and explanation for these two differing speeches. Again, after Cassian got Mothma to safety, after she delivered the speech in the Coruscant Senate, one of the other spies said that she was to deliver another recorded speech for the galaxy, and to show off just how much everyone on Andor's production was keeping this continuity so smooth, in the show Rebels, which came out first, Mon Mothma is wearing her white robes when she delivers the speech. In Andor, when she delivers her first speech in the Senate, she has a blue robe on top of those white robes, and in the chaos of the escape from Coruscant, she loses the blue robe and only has the white robes, so she looks exactly like she does in the animation of Rebels, for when she in the future delivers this second speech. So, all of this is to say, holy cow, Andor is an excellent show. Even if it wasn't Star Wars, it's amazing science fiction and an incredible tale of rebellion against fascism. So I again want to say that while continuity in a shared and elaborate fictional universe is important, taking these lengths to include both the substance, the quality of the show, and the connections to everything that came before, the acknowledgements, is awesome. And not to mention, incredibly vindicating for fans. I think it's clear from this show how important maintaining continuity is for Lucasfilm and the story group, because they know how important it is to the fans who love Star Wars. Anyway, that's my video. I really hope you liked it. Thank you so much for watching.